Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this session, which is about yoga and movement for every ability. I'm very excited to share with you our story of how we were able to use yoga and movement to get my son, Rafi, to move and improve his body and mind connection. All Angelman kids need more stimulation and exercise, but how do you motivate them to do something and move? Allow me to first introduce myself. My name is Hilda Tourians, and I'm first and foremost a mother of a 30-year-old who has Angelman with mutation. My formal training and career was in IT, but I have been studying yoga for over 20 years and recently decided to leave the corporate world and bring my focus to teaching yoga to people with disabilities. Last year, I started working with Yuji Oka, who is the founder of Spiral Praxis in Toronto, Canada, where I got my certification to teach adaptive yoga for special needs. I will introduce him more formally later in this program. Here is what we're going to cover in this session. The first 20 minutes, I'm going to share our story of Rafi and how we were able to get him familiarized with yoga movements and how that changed his life. I also have some practical advice on how to get started with your own kids. Next, my colleague and mentor Yuji is going to share some examples from their studio with focus on different types of disabilities and different age groups. It all started last year during COVID when all day programs had to shut down and Rafi was bound to stay home. We noticed that he doesn't want to walk anymore and noticed a very distinct gait, which is all too familiar to us parents of Angelman kids. At first, I reached out to physical therapists, but unfortunately, due to COVID, it was not going anywhere. Then I started working with him on basic yoga movements. Since I didn't have any formal training as a teacher in yoga, I just started playing with him, and he loved getting full attention from me and my husband. We were trying to help him understand some of the concepts, like this is a mat and each person stays in their own space, but that just didn't make any sense to him. All he wanted to do was play, which was fine. We made it very fun. As you notice in the picture, there is a weighted pillow that the physical therapist told me we could use to help with his tight hip flexors, but he hated it. He didn't want to have anything to do with it at first. But slowly we started demonstrating it on my husband, and then now it's his favorite thing to do at the end of each yoga session. In September, we were slowly making progress. He started understanding the purpose of the mat and the belt. We started taking pictures of him with the poses. The next time we showed the picture to him and he remembered what we were expecting him to do. That was very helpful. We kept the sessions very short, 10 to 15 minutes. He would always get distracted, like wanted to play music. We had to bring his attention back gently, and he was fine. In the meantime, I was searching for a program that I could get a formal training in yoga for disabilities. And fortunately, I came across Yuji at Spiral Praxis, which was offering an online course. In that course, I was able to learn a lot more about techniques to work with people with special needs, like, for example, using hand and feet markers to denote where they should put their hands and feet. I understood that there is a basic structure and vocabulary to teaching movement and yoga to people with special needs. There are standing poses, such as mountain pose. There are crawling poses, such as dog pose, down dog, then laying down pose like butterfly and child pose. Now I had a clear vision of what I wanted to work with him on. Simple tasks, such as sitting cross-legged, was not easy for him. So we had to come up with ways to keep him occupied and focused on the task, like throwing a ball. Straightening his leg was not easy either. Fortunately, my husband was there, and between the two of us, we were able to demonstrate and finally get him to do something. Don't get frustrated, and just be happy to keep them moving and keep them interested, even if they do the task incorrectly. Then I started teaching him some standing poses. It's difficult to get him to understand why I ask him to do something. So we came up with stories. Like when we were trying to teach him the triangle pose, I would tell him there is a cat under the chair, and we want to lift the chair slowly to let the cat out. He would giggle at the end. Mountain pose was not easy either. To get him to raise his hands above the head was a challenge. So we gave him a bar to reach up to. Down dog was difficult for him to put his hands on the floor. So we raised the floor and had him put his hands on a chair instead. These are simple things you can try at home. It would be better to have a wall behind him to take the issue of balance out of the way. You need to demonstrate the pose with him, and at the same time, do it when he's doing it. Repetition is the key. Child pose. Child pose was an interesting one. We tried many ways to teach him child pose, but he would constantly lift his buttocks. Finally, we broke the pose down to sections. We first worked on sitting the buttocks on the heels and play with the ball. Then the following week, we added the blocks for his hands and a bolster and some blankets for his head, so it becomes more tolerable. Each person is going to be different, and depending on their abilities and constraints, you would want to modify the pose using the props. We basically had to be creative and find ways to entertain him while he's in a pose, like throwing him a ball, which I will show you in a minute in a video. You have to respect their limitations and not force them to do something, but instead make it possible for them to try. Let's now watch a video.
Throw the ball, Merlin. Throw the ball one more time. Now, Rafi, you throw the ball.
Are you taking video?
Yes. Throw the ball, yeah.
Catch, good catch. Oh.
Okay, now we're going to go into a child pose, okay? So, Merlin, show him what to do.
Okay.
Just go in front of him.
Well, if I do it, we're going to run into each
That's okay. Put your hands on him. And Rafi, you go forward too. Now put your butt down, Rafi. Put your butt down.
His favorite part of the yoga practice is the ending. We always make sure he has at least 5 minutes at the end to enjoy and relax with the weight on his thighs for the tight hip flexors. I also sometimes massage his legs and hands, which is great stimulation for him, and he loves it. Never ask them to close their eyes in Shavasana. They just don't like it. I want to share some practical, simple poses that you can try. Try to keep no more than 8 poses, maybe 1 or 2 to start with, but then slowly increase it to no more than 8. We started with 10 to 15 minutes and slowly increased it to 25 to 30 minutes. So legs up at the wall, I think you've seen the picture of it, is a very easy one to start with. Would be a warm up. Then putting belt around both legs. You also saw a picture of that, so that will be also a good warm up. Then some standing poses, mountain pose or starfish. Just putting your hands out, putting your hands up. Moving in and out of these poses will be really good for them to do. Down dog, hands on the block or hands on the chair would be a good one, depending on how far down they can go. Child pose, first sitting on their legs, stretching forward, or even just sitting and playing with the ball. Butterfly pose, I think you saw a picture of, on top of a bolster, is a great way to open their tight hip flexors as well. And finally, the corpse pose, Shavasana, face down with a sandbag on the hips, or the classic face up Shavasana, depending on what their toleration is, level of toleration is. We slowly started doing more complicated poses. This pose that you're seeing here in the picture was one of the more challenging ones, and I took a video of him starting out. Let's go to that one and see if that will play for you.
See, I go back. Now you go back.
Go back. Go back, Rafi.
As you notice,
Lean back.
he just does not want to go back.
No, lean back.
He's like, what
Go,
am I
go, go,
supposed
go,
to
go,
do?
go, 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 go. Good job.
This was the first time we tried it.
Now you go back.
Rafi goes back.
Go back. Go back,
I'll
Rafi.
support you. I'll support
Go,
you.
go, 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 go.
All right, and then I go.
And then we added a bolster to support him. Now he completely goes back and he understands exactly what we're expecting him to do.
Go back.
And when he lays back,
And I go back.
really good to stretch his tight hip flexors. We also started adding horseback riding, swimming, and at the park, we would do a 3-wheel bike. He's increased activity, he's excited going out, and it's now yoga has taken him to other things that he wouldn't have done. He just did not want to do anything 6 months ago. I now want to show you a video of what his posture was last year and what his posture is now 6 months later. This was July of 2022. This distinct gait that he has. No control. A lot more straight. Back is straight.
Run. Let's all run. Run.
And as you saw, he can even run. So what's next? We're hoping that we can move yoga to his group home so he can get to do it more regularly. We are trying to get him used to doing Zoom and videos, watching YouTube videos on yoga so he can move. And more movement is better for him, any kind of movement. So trying to get him to do some rolling, jumping. Basically, our goal is to increase his strength and flexibility. Finally, our goal is to get him to walk 20 minutes to go to lunch together. I hope you're excited about the possibilities for your own children, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to help you as much as I can. I also want to thank Kelly David and the rest of the board at FAST for putting together this amazing conference. I attended my first conference 2 years ago in Chicago, and I was blown away with the quality and density of the content that they offered. It's been an honor and privilege to present at this conference and hope to be of service in the future. Let me now introduce you to our next presenter, Yuji Oka, founder of Spiral Movement Center in Toronto. Yuji graduated from the School of Dance at Ohio State University with a background in physics. With his former partner, they developed the motion curriculum at the Positive Education Program in Cleveland. He has been studying somatics and movement for over 30 years, and the Spiral Movement Center and its curricula are a product of those years of study and research. With that, I'll pass it on to Yuji.
When children are young, they're always moving. And when they're moving, they're always enjoying that movement. That's because the body lies at the center of their lives. Through the body, they learn about the world, and they learn about who they are. The body is a child's foundation. It will help them become strong, it will help them self-regulate, it will help them become self-confident, and will help them to enjoy life. Every child loves to move, and it's our responsibility as parents, caregivers, and teachers to help encourage this beautiful flow of motion. Hi, my name is Yuji Oka, and I've been working with children with special needs and disabilities for over 30 years. One of the most important things I've learned in that time is that all children love to move. It doesn't matter if they're challenged with physical or cognitive disabilities, all children love to move. So in this 30-minute presentation, we're going to look at why movement is so important for our kids. We're also going to see how we can encourage our children to learn and experience movement, not through constant exercise and drilling, which you see in a lot of traditional physical therapy, but rather through a creative, holistic process that emphasizes their internal experience. The approach that I teach, adaptive spiral praxis, is part of a field called somatics, which emphasizes the internal experience of physical activity. That inner focus is the key to successfully work with your child, whether they have special needs like autism, developmental delays, or Down syndrome, or if they have disabilities like cerebral palsy, genetic syndromes, or partial paralysis. Focusing on the experiential side of movement will help your children make rapid progress in their movement capability. So let me tell you a little bit about my background The roots of adaptive praxis began 30 years ago when my partner and I started working with children with special needs at the Positive Education Program. That's Ohio's largest mental health organization. Now, I noticed there, even in the schools dedicated to these populations, the motor curricula wasn't really very well developed. Of course, there were OT services and PT services, but they really weren't addressing the need for organized motor activities that would be part of a child's everyday life. So we decided to make a motor curriculum for these children that would let children start from the very beginning and revisit the basic developmental motor milestones like rolling, crawling, and jumping. So let's say, for example, they were learning a log roll. We would have the children do the log roll in different ways. We'd have them roll down an incline, or have them roll themselves, or maybe hold hands while they're rolling, or maybe rolling them fast and slow. So by exploring movements in different ways, we found that children could practice the movement more playfully and with a greater sense of involvement. And that also meant that they could find their own door into becoming more aware of their bodies. This flexibility of allowing children to find their own doors to movement proved unexpectedly successful with them. Teachers were really surprised that we were bringing the kids back to the classroom much calmer than they were. And in a few years, our program was going so well that the administration decided to do a research project with our kids. And here you can see the results. The black bars represent the pre-scores, and the white bars represent the post-scores of various movement skills. And when these results were tested against the standardized Peabody developmental motor skills, we found that the kids had increased their percentile ranking from 10 to 26%, which meant that our kids were slowly beginning to catch up to their typical peers. But forget about all these numbers and statistics. If you look at these videos, you can see exactly what motor progress means. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of this work, I wanted to start with some of the basic principles that we use to work creatively and holistically with our children. When parents and teachers are working with their kids with special needs and disabilities, they often don't know where to start with their physical development, and that's because we normally don't think of movement as an educational process. Typically, by the time a child is 2 years old, they've already passed that natural sensory motor stage where they've learned how to roll, crawl, and jump. But with our kids with special needs and disabilities, it doesn't work that way. We can't expect them to start with sports or even organized play because they don't necessarily have the foundation within their bodies to be calm and to be grounded and to move in a purposeful way. To get ourselves into the right frame of mind, I want to give you these 5 basic principles that we follow in ASP work. 1. Always look for things that children enjoy. Natural motivation is the most important thing in working with your children. You always have to look out for what children like, not only physically, but also in terms of objects, their environment, and their peer interactions.
It's just the sheer joy on her face that she's doing it when she's doing anything regarding yoga is just wonderful to see. She's willing to try everything. Outside of this climate, she has fears.
2. Always work where children are at. The place to start is at the present moment. Never criticize a child's motor ability, but always learn to embrace where your child is at and build from there.
He loves these sessions because I know that every time he comes here, he's strengthening those pathways that feel good. You know, these are little like incremental, microscopic, kind of like tiny little steps, but you keep at it and 10 years later, you're a new man.
3. Always reinforce and record new seeds of progress. So when we see our child regularly, we sometimes forget the little steps of progress that children make every day. It's important to praise these little steps of progress and to record them so that you remember the immense gains they're making over time.
Ryan has gone from being able to independently hold her head up, and now we're working on standing. It's so funny, we've come so far from that moment, but that moment was something that was such a far-off dream for so long.
4. Always adapt activities to encourage children to do their best. So there's no absolute right way of doing movement. We have to break up the movement into bite-sized chunks and make incremental changes until a child gets the full movement skill. That way, a child can learn easier at their own pace.
What this program has offered me is it's offered me hope, because I see continued progress with Aiden. Simple things, he was able to jump, and not just jump, but he could jump with strength and with power. And we also noticed broader improvements that extended from motor planning for his body to what we believe was motor planning for his speech as well.
Finally, 5. Always give encouragement, but don't give easy praise. Children are molded by the words you give them. You want to always give them a positive environment of support and encouragement, but without giving empty praise. If you praise children without merit, they're going to lose that courage they need to learn.
I've seen Stephen here doing these vigorous exercises, and he's smiling. There's that sense of self-esteem and self-worth that, I've never been able to see him shine like that before.
This webinar is focused on 2 populations of families that we serve on our online classes. The first are families with children with special needs, such as autism, global developmental delays, or Down syndrome. And in this population, most of the children can do the basic motor skills of rolling, crawling, and jumping, but they have trouble doing them naturally. There may be issues of body awareness, self-regulation, balance, coordination, speed, or strength that they have to deal with. The second are families with children with disabilities, such as cerebral palsy, genetic disorders, and partial paralysis. Most of the children in this population have to use wheelchairs and have to learn rolling, crawling, and walking from the very beginning. So with both these populations of children with special needs or disabilities, they're going to require very different approaches, because children with disabilities is going to be working mainly in pre-locomotive activities, whereas children with special needs are going to be dealing with locomotive activities. But the basic setup of the sessions are the same for both groups, and you're going to just need a few things: space and equipment, and time. You can do a movement session almost anywhere, but it's always good to have an open, clear space that's dedicated to your sessions, and that's because you're going to need some equipment like mats, balls, and cushions, and you don't want to have your space cluttered so that it can distract your child. Even if you don't have a dedicated space, you can often get by. We've worked in living rooms, in parks, and grass outside, and sometimes that's even better than being stuck indoors. We've also used milk crates, carpets, wood benches to do our sessions. So really any space and any equipment is good, as long as you can keep it clean and free of distractions. One mistake that parents and caregivers often make is to make their sessions too long. So if you're a professional like me, you might want to work with children between 45 and 90 minutes. But if you're a parent or caregiver, it's usually better to work in smaller chunks, 10 to 30 minutes at a time, and scatter them out through the day. So for example, if you're working with a child with disability, you might want to do your first massage session in the morning for 10 to 20 minutes, then a flow patterning session in the afternoon for 10 to 20 minutes, and then you want to do your equilibrium positions for 10 to 20 minutes in the evening. Spreading the sessions out through the day is much easier than to do it all at once, and it's almost always better to focus really well for 10 minutes and do high quality work than to do boring stuff for an hour. You always want to keep everything light and fun, and let a child's natural motivation work for you. At the beginning of this webinar, I said that it's not difficult to teach movement to kids, And in the ASP program for special needs, you'll see it's very simple. It's just built around 3 different categories of movement: rolling, crawling, and jumping. Within each category, there are different kinds of movement. So that with rolling, there is log rolling, front rolling, side rolling, and back rolling. And in crawling, there are different coordinations: homologous, homolateral, and contralateral. And in jumping, there is jumping on 2 feet, galloping, hopping, and skipping. So each of these movements represent a basic gross motor milestone, and altogether they form a sketch for a well-rounded, holistic motor curriculum. But the real key to making this core vocabulary of movement interesting for children with special needs is to make their exploration interesting and experiential. In ASP, as you've seen before, we try to do this by making variations in time, space, and energy, and through peer interaction. So if you take a certain skill like log rolling, as we said before, you can make all sorts of different variations based on partnering variations and also working with the space, time, energy variations so that you might vary the speed or the intensity or how many kids are doing it at the same time. Planning a class is super easy. What you want to do is take 3 movements from each of the categories of locomotion, add a few variations to each, and then let the children explore the movements as they like. In more advanced sessions, you can start stringing these movement skills together to form obstacle-like courses that challenge a child to learn different spatial operations, which can really improve their cognitive ability as well as their ability to work with other children. Finally, we also start to add adapted yoga, fitness, and coordination activities into the mix so that children have a very wide variety of movement experiences, and this is the key to a holistic special needs program. Children with disability need a much deeper exploration of movement. In order to work with them, you have to learn how to break down the process of learning into very, very tiny steps that come before the locomotion stage. So there are 3 stages that come before the locomotion stage. 1, awareness building or plowing the field. In this stage of motor learning, we're focused on eliminating any difficulties in a child's body and building a child's awareness. So I like to call this stage plowing the field because it's as if we're clearing their body to get it ready to move. For example, in this situation, Solomon is helping his daughter Sonali eliminate the clicks in her knees by using what we call a simple flexion extension traction. Using this technique, he was able to get rid of the clicks in her knee in just a month. In addition, we work with children with various relaxation techniques, using weights or touch to help them calm themselves and to help them learn how to be physically still, which is incredibly important to start the motor learning process. The next stage for children with disability is called flow patterning, where we teach children to initiate movement in a purposeful way. Initiating movement means nurturing that spark of intention when a child wants to move their body. In order to do this, we simply have the children move a single part of their body in simple paths like lines or circles. And we use our own hands to guide them and direct their fledgling movements. So it's a bit like building a fire. You have to slowly warm up that body part, make it come alive by encouraging the senses, and then finding that spark that will let it move. Flow patterning is one of the most beautiful parts of disability training because there's such a subtle communication between you and a child to help them understand their body. The third stage in the ASB method is to focus on equilibrium and oscillations of the body, and that's not nearly as complicated as it sounds. Basically, as soon as it's possible, you want a child to be starting to bear weight. Weight bearing is important because the muscles can't really start to work properly until they are supporting bones. The fundamental equilibrium positions are lying down in prone or supine position, sitting position, 4-point or crawling position, and kneeling and standing. Teaching your child to learn these positions is a gradual process of strengthening. The entire focus is on making sure that a child's alignment is correct and that they are balancing through their bones.
I think the somatic approach is effective for Aiden because it starts with where he is. It meets him where he is, and it allows him to feel himself.
He's very happy to do every movement, every activities. He's such a fun doing, enjoying. This is more important.
I can see Massimo's expression that is very happy that that part of the body is moving as he wants.
It's providing a child the opportunity to learn how to move and learn how to gain power over their own abilities.
The value is far beyond I ever imagined.
They hone the program according to each individual's abilities.
Quite frankly, he was doing rock climbing courses that I can't do.
It's too many feelings together. Like you feel scary because you never see her doing that and you think she's gonna collapse and fall that time, but at the same time it's like really exciting.
So I hope this overview of creating motor curricula for your children with special needs and disability has been helpful and informative. What I've tried to do here is give you an outline of how to approach your teaching and give some creative suggestions about what is possible. I truly encourage you to experiment with these ideas and techniques because even though there are experts that can help, it's super rewarding and helpful when parents and caregivers can step in and give their own children opportunities to move in a more free and open way. I'd like to finish this presentation with Kate's story. Kate is a young girl with a genetic syndrome called Wolff-Hirschhorn's disease. Her story shows the incredible power of movement to help children come out of their shell and become who they truly are.
She's this super smart, bright little girl living inside, very restricted by her body.
You can do it. Come on. Come this way. Okay. I do my hand this way.
For a long time, we felt she's so passive. It's very hard to do anything. When I play with Kate, I don't find a lot of difficulty, but then there are times like I really don't know what to do with her. If I want her to sit down to draw, to learn whatever, she just won't. That's when I just don't know what to do. I feel like our job as parents is really just to bring her to this world as much as possible. That's how I feel. And then find activities that she really enjoys doing, and because we know that when she does what she enjoys doing, she's in this world. She really flourishes. This year, the biggest change, I think, in the fall, we did quite a few hikes with Kate. In the past, we wouldn't because she just wouldn't walk. After walking for maybe less than 5 minutes, she would just try to find a place to lie on the ground. We let her take the lead more now. Her strength has improved. And the second, she definitely started to notice things around her. She would pick up leaves, spread little twigs, and it's almost to a point that there was a little trail she wouldn't leave. We couldn't drag her out. So it's such a big change.
What color is this at? Red. You see red?
We know that she has the ability inside to find her way. That's the real her, I find. Whenever we see something creative